kind of entirely ignoring the fact that the user also gave us a specific location. So we want to have a way to capture that specific information. So right now we're just capturing the intent of what they're asking. So to do that, we'll do it with entities. So entities, typically you would add your own manually, but again, much like the intents, you can also import them. So let's start with, maybe we'll create a location entity, and let's say I call it, let's say Sydney. Here I can have synonyms, not very applicable for a city, but in some cases, if the value that I was capturing was coffee, because this is a chatbot that allows people to order a coffee, then I might have synonyms like cappuccino or espresso or similar terms. I also have an advanced option to do patterns. This is more, yes?
Sorry to interrupt. Are you able to zoom in a little bit?
Let me see if I can increase the font size a little. Better? Sorry about that. So along with synonyms, you also have the option, this is more for programmers because it's a little more advanced, to specify patterns based on regular expressions. What that means is that, for example, you could specify a pattern to detect whether a phone number is an Australian phone number, or if it's a New Zealand phone number, or an American phone number, for example. So it's kind of or maybe an email format, whatever it needs to be detected based on the structure of the information that is provided, as opposed to an exact value, like in the case of a synonym. So I also have the option to see some recommendations for synonyms provided by Watson. These are very, very meaningful for generic terms like coffee. For cities, not so much. I mean, you'll get some, similar places or places nearby. You'll get definitely Australia and so on. But for cities, it's not overly useful. So I added Sydney. Now let's say our shop also has Melbourne. Let's say we have Brisbane. Now let's say we got Auckland as well. Okay, so Watson will start doing some training. It's not as extensive training as intents, because the extent of the training on entities is the fact that here we have fuzzy matching enabled, which means that it's going to be able to detect the cities if the user makes a typo, and that's about it. Watson doesn't do a lot of guessing when it comes to specific entities, because again, it's specific pieces of information that you define, and so that's all it gets detected in the user input. So, but nevertheless, once it's done training, now I can try the same input again, and you'll see that now we get hours info, which is the intent, but we also get the location Sydney. If I make a typo, and I don't know, let's say I say Sydney spelled with two N's by mistake, it will still detect it as well. Now, as far as the creation of intents, that's pretty much it. Same deal as usual. You can select them, export them, delete them, the same. Typical CRUD operations that you would do on intents, you can do on entities. One thing though that have a little bit of a difference from intents is that you have the concept of system entities, and these are kind of pre-made entities for you. You'll see that there are some to collect information like dates. So for example, the user might say next Monday, and that will be translated into an actual date. Collect numbers, because maybe this is for a reservation and you're collecting the party size. So the user might say, we are going to be 7 people, and all you care about is 7. And so you use this system entity to detect it and so on. So whenever you need one, you just enable it, right? You just toggle on and off. Now I want to show you sys location, because this is the system entity that collects location. So cities, countries, regions, and so on. You might notice that there's a little bit of overlap here. We defined our own location, but there's sys location. Couldn't we just use sys location? We could. I'll show you the reason why we went with our own version, but we definitely can use this location. So let's try it. I'm going to clear it to start a new conversation. I'm going to go with, what are your hours in Sydney? Good. This location gets detected, much like our own. Now I'm going to do, what are your hours in Sydney with 2 N's? And we don't get it. So this location is a collection of a huge list of cities and regions and countries, but you have to type it in correctly. So it's not forgiving. In our case, we define an entity with fuzzy matching on, which means the user does a typo, doesn't matter, it will still be detected. With system entities, we don't have the luxury because the location, this location is huge. It's a huge list of thousands and thousands of locations. So if we start being kind of fuzzy with the matching, it's very easy to pick up by mistake the wrong city. So even though it's there and you can use it, if your chatbot needs to handle a really large variety of possible cities, definitely use this location. If not, like in our case, we're going to have 4 or 5 locations for our store. Creating our own that is specific to those locations, it's a better approach. Now, there's also a third approach, which would be maybe creating a spreadsheet of all the possible locations and importing it as a CSV and enabling fuzzy matching. That's a compromise, depending on your chatbot, might be also an option. So I'm going to disable it because we're just going to use our own location. And so there is system entities, there is the creation of entities on our own, and then there is, of course, the import as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the import icon next to add the entity, and I'm going to try to find the file. I have it here. And as you can see, the format is a little bit different. Before, there used to be the example, and then there was the intent. Here, it's kind of the other way around. You first put the entity value, so the entity, then the value for the entity, and then if you have synonyms, you put the list of synonyms next to it. If you specify some regular expression pattern, same deal. So once I import, you'll see that we created two new entities with 20 new values, 70 synonyms, and no patterns. So just to show you, this is a chatbot for flowers. Today we're mostly going to focus on, for the most part, we'll focus on hours of operation and location information. But maybe you want to expand it and add the flower recommendations. And the flower recommendations will typically be maybe based on a couple of possibilities. One is a special occasion, like Valentine's Day, and maybe a special relationship, like flowers for my wife or flowers for my mother. So we imported 2 entities. I'll show you what they look like. Occasion, just a list of possible occasions with some, synonyms that are similar to, express the same concept. And also relationships. So same deal, just different categories of human relationships with similar synonyms that express the same concept. You'll see that for friend, some of the synonyms have things like professor or roommate or neighbor. Those are not really friends typically, but nevertheless, well, hopefully the roommates are friends. But maybe the teacher or the professor might not be a friend. But as far as we're concerned here, they are a friend because our chatbot will provide a recommendation that is the same for the professor and the friend. You also have the option, of course, to create its own category. So you could create an entity value for professor with a synonym of teacher. And then when you decide how to respond in the dialogue, as we'll see later, say as a condition if it's a friend or a professor, do something. Here, we took the shortcut and we just put the same all as a synonym.
Is that similar to girlfriend and fiance?
Same thing, yeah, absolutely. You can do that. You could create it as separate. Maybe you want to spend more money for your fiance and invest less in your girlfriend. Or vice versa, if you're very committed in the beginning, so you go big with a girlfriend, but then you're kind of saving for, you already spend all your money on a ring, so you have less money for the fiance, and therefore your recommendations might be different. So you could do it as two separate entity values, or just use a synonym because you're gonna give the same recommendation. So again, the word synonym really makes you think dictionary, but it's not the dictionary. It's whatever the business logic behind the synonym. What is a synonym is determined by your specific business. So,
for example, if you have coffee, can be a long black, short black, cappuccino, whatever. So the computer doesn't really understand that, and you have to tell the computer. For example, when you tell Watson, I'm having a short black in the Big Apple, well, that could be seen as very offensive if you're in America. Big Apple, okay, New York, but short black in Australia is a small coffee. It's an espresso. So you have to tell the computer what this actually is.
yeah, and I mean, it's obviously it depends on your customer, the kind of country that you're targeting, of course. Certain words are offensive in some countries, not other. You know, like, so basically, you always want to be aware of who your customers are and adjust responses and the detection of entities and intents accordingly. So as far as the third lab, that's what you'll do. You'll start by creating, modifying, deleting entities like we did manually. And then you will try the system entities. You'll play a little bit with syslocation. And then you'll import and export from CSV file.
So within the entity, there's a synonyms pattern. What's the pattern?
So for the pattern, you have, let me show you. Location, okay, so let's say you say the, Australian number, right? So then as a pattern, you will go here and you will specify a pattern that is based on a regular expression. So you will say it has to have 2 digits in the beginning, then a dash, then 3 digits, and so on. I do provide an example in the labs at some point. I'm not sure if it's in this lab. Yes, I do, right here, right? So if I were to, let's say, copy that in, okay, so a pattern for an Australian number might be 04, maybe a mobile number or something. 04, then a couple of digits, then a space, then 3 digits, then a couple of space, and then 3 digits. So it's a little bit of programming, but essentially what happens is that when it detects a number like that, it will be stored as the value, as having detected an Australian number. So we can try it even once it's done training, but I believe it's like something like this, or maybe spaces. So 04, then 1, 2, then space, then 1, 2, 3, space, 1, 2, 3. Does it look
for
like
contact numbers, like mobile phone?
yeah, exactly. So something like that, and it will detect it that it's an Australian number. No problem. Okay, so we're on lab 3. If you have any questions, let me know, but otherwise, good luck.